Today, I will tell you the story of my patient, and from his experience, you will be able to understand exactly how to regain natural strength and confidence after 60. When a 64-year-old man named Martin walked into my office, he carried the kind of worry that comes from months of silent fear. He said he had always been active, confident, and proud of how well he managed his health. But in the last year, something had changed. He had a girlfriend who was younger, and although their relationship was loving, he felt pressure to perform the way he did in his younger years. Out of panic, he tried Viagra because a friend told him it would give him instant strength. But instead it brought him pounding headaches, sudden dizziness, and a strange tightness in his chest that frightened him more than the problem itself. His girlfriend grew confused because he started avoiding closeness, not because he did not want her, but because he was scared of what the pill might do to his heart. She even told him she felt he was slipping away emotionally. That fear pushed him to seek help. When he sat with me, he asked why this was happening at 64 when he still felt youthful in his mind. I explained that most men at his age do not lose their ability because of age. The real reasons are slower blood circulation, stiffer blood vessels, higher stress levels, and a drop in natural morning energy. I told him about another patient, Leonard, who was 68 and believed he had lost his strength forever. In Leonard's case, the issue was poor sleep, rising blood sugar, and daily stress that kept his body from responding the way it used to. When those issues improved, Leonard regained everything he thought was gone. As Martin listened, his face softened because he realized nothing inside him was permanently broken. His body was asking for support, not chemicals that shocked his system. He said what he really wanted was something natural and safe, something that would protect his heart instead of straining it. When he left my office that day, he finally felt hopeful. He understood why many men after 60 struggle and said he was ready to hear the natural formula that had changed the lives of others before him. In the next meeting, I explained to Martin why relying on pills like Viagra could create more problems than solutions for men over 60. I told him that the main issue was not the pill itself, but the way it forced the heart and blood vessels to behave in a way they were not always prepared for. Many men believed these pills were harmless because they worked quickly, but they did not realize how sharply they could change blood pressure, strain the heart, and interfere with other medications. I shared the story of Harvey, a 67-year-old man who had been using these pills quietly for months without telling his doctor. He thought they were the only way to protect his marriage, but one night he developed severe facial flushing, a pounding pulse, and sudden lightheadedness that made him collapse on the edge of his bed. When he came to see me later, he said the scariest part was not the fall. It was the realization that he had risked his life for a temporary effect that never solved the real problem. I also mentioned Ethan, a 70-year-old man who began to suffer from vision disturbances and ringing in his ears after taking these medications regularly. His biggest fear was not the discomfort, but the thought that one strong dose might trigger something serious because he already had mild hypertension. As I told these stories, Martin began to understand that what seemed like a fast and easy solution often carried hidden risks, especially for men with heart concerns, fluctuating blood pressure, or undiagnosed conditions. I explained to him that these pills did not fix circulation, did not lower inflammation, and did not improve the body's natural pathways. They only forced the system for a few hours and left it even more exhausted afterward. A man might feel relief for one night, but the next day he often felt more tired, more anxious, and more dependent on the pill. Martin nodded slowly because he recognized the same hesitation in himself. He admitted he had already started fearing the moment he would need to use a pill again. That fear alone was destroying his confidence. I told him this cycle of dependence was common among men who believed there was no other option. The biggest danger was not just the pill's side effects, but the way it convinced men that their bodies could no longer function naturally. I assured Martin that this was not true. I explained that several of my patients, once they stopped relying on medications, regained the natural strength they believed was lost forever. Some even said they felt younger than they had in years. Hearing this, Martin leaned back in the chair, almost relieved and almost surprised. He said he wished he had known these things earlier because it would have saved him from months of anxiety. I told him he was not alone. Many men in their 60s and 70s came to me with the same fear, and most of them recovered once they understood their real problem was not permanent. As the conversation ended, Martin said he was ready to try something different, something that supported his heart instead of pressuring it. He said he wanted a method that worked with his body rather than against it. I told him the natural path worked slowly but steadily and had transformed the lives of men like Harvey and Ethan. As he walked out that day, he said he finally felt he was stepping towards something safer, something that would give him confidence without risk. And he told me he was eager for the next step because if there was a natural formula that had already changed other men's lives, he wanted to know how it could change his too. When Martin returned a week later, he looked calmer, almost as if understanding the risks had already lifted half the weight from his shoulders. I began explaining to him what really needed to happen inside the body for a man over 60 to regain strength naturally. I told him the key was not more pills. The real solution was natural foods that I will discuss later, and those foods would transform his body. Most men at his age believed their issue was desire, but in reality the biggest problem was restricted blood flow, something that developed silently over the years due to stress, poor diet, lack of movement, or even hidden inflammation. I shared the story of Tom, a 66-year-old retired engineer who came to me convinced he had no hope left. He said he felt exhausted even on days he slept well, and he assumed it was simply age catching up with him. But after running some tests, we discovered that his circulation was slow and his stress hormones were constantly elevated. Once those areas were addressed, Tom said he felt like someone had switched on a light inside him. His wife later told me he seemed 10 years younger, not because of anything dramatic, but because his natural energy had returned. I also talked about Gerald, a 72-year-old man who carried the belief that after 60 everything simply declined. He spent years avoiding conversations about health because he assumed nothing could change. But when he started focusing on better blood flow and reduced inflammation, his confidence returned one step at a time. His wife later said they talked more, laughed more, and felt closer than they had in years. Hearing these stories, Martin said he finally understood that the issue was not a lack of manhood, but a lack of oxygen reaching the right parts of the body. I explained to him that when circulation improves, the body responds naturally without fear, pressure, or chemicals. The brain sends stronger signals, the vessels relax more easily, and the body behaves the way it was designed to. I told him that the secret behind all these stories was consistency. Men like Tom and Gerald did not transform overnight. They improved because they worked with their bodies, not against them. They allowed their systems to recover from years of stress and poor habits. Martin listened carefully because for the first time he realized that his situation had nothing to do with age stealing something from him. It had everything to do with giving his body the support it needed. He said he felt hopeful because if men in their late 60s and early 70s could get their natural strength back, then he had no reason to believe he could not. As the session ended, he told me he was ready for the next step. He wanted to know not only what improved circulation, but what specific natural ingredients had helped these men rebuild their lives. I told him we would talk about those in detail in the next meeting, and as he walked out, he said he felt something he had not felt in a long time. He felt the return of possibility. When Martin met me for the fourth time, he said he had spent the entire week thinking about the stories I shared and realizing how similar his situation was to the other men. He said he now understood that the problem was not that his body had stopped working. It was that his body had been asking for help in ways he never recognized. I explained that before giving him the natural formula, he needed to understand why men like him often felt improvement even before starting any treatment. The moment fear and pressure are removed, the body begins to relax, and when tension drops, circulation improves on its own. I told him about Patrick, a 69-year-old man who had convinced himself that his confidence was gone forever. But after learning the real reasons behind his struggles, he said he felt lighter, as if someone had removed a heavy stone from his chest. That alone improved his sleep, lowered his stress, and made him feel more energetic before he even changed his diet. I also mentioned Stan, a 71-year-old man who spent years hiding his worries because he felt embarrassed to admit them. When he finally spoke up and understood what was happening inside his body, he said the relief alone changed everything. His mood lifted, his breathing improved, and even his mornings felt different because his mind was no longer fighting itself. Martin listened closely as I explained that emotional pressure was one of the biggest silent reasons older men struggled. When a man feels watched, judged, or rushed, the body releases stress hormones that tighten blood vessels and block natural signals from the brain. It had nothing to do with weakness or age. It was simply biology. I told Martin that many men who believed they needed medication only needed a steady restoration of blood flow, relaxation, and confidence. I shared how Alan, a 70-year-old man with diabetes, improved simply by reducing inflammation and practicing slow breathing exercises each evening. His wife later told me that he seemed more peaceful than he had been in years, and that peace made everything else easier. Hearing these experiences, Martin said he finally saw a pattern. The men who recovered were not the strongest or the youngest. They were the ones who understood what their bodies needed and allowed themselves time to heal. I reminded him that his own journey was already moving forward because he had replaced fear with understanding. That alone placed him far ahead of where he was when he walked into my office the first time. As he prepared to leave, Martin said he felt ready for whatever came next and admitted that the suspense was making him more curious each day. He said if there truly was a natural formula that helped men like Patrick, Stan, and Alan reclaim their confidence, then he could not wait for the moment when he would learn exactly what it was. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm really curious where our content travels. I read every comment. Now let's continue. When Martin came for the final session, he said he was ready to hear the natural formula that had helped so many men before him. I explained that the solution was much simpler than he imagined. 3 powerful foods had changed the lives of men in their 60s and 70s because they supported circulation and energy without stressing the heart. The first was green beans, rich in magnesium and natural antioxidants. They helped relax stiff blood vessels and supported smoother blood flow. A patient named John, who was 74, added them to his meals and felt a steady rise in energy each week. The second food was spinach, one of the strongest natural boosters of nitric oxide, the compound that signals vessels to open and carry oxygen more freely. A man named Gerald, at 72, felt a noticeable shift in his morning strength after including spinach regularly. The third was pumpkin seeds, a rich source of zinc and healthy fats that supported hormone balance and overall vitality. Samuel, a man of 69, once believed his days of confidence were over, but after adding these seeds into his diet, his mind and body both grew stronger. Hearing these results, Martin understood that the secret was not in chemicals or quick fixes, but in foods that worked with his body. He said he finally felt hopeful because the solution was natural, safe, and practical for any man over 60. As he left, he carried a quiet confidence, knowing that with these simple changes, he was taking back the control he thought he had lost forever. Hit subscribe and ring the bell if you want better health,